I'm Bob Palm. Welcome to Watchtower Remembers. Today we have a guest who may have done something that in some circles is considered inexcusable. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Vim Brimstein. Vim?
How you doing?
Doing great. How are you tonight?
There's a sharp echo. But let me try to do something on my end. I can adjust the microphone. Yeah, so about 10 years ago, I had a situation come up with the brothers, and we discussed some things, and they heard some things, and they weren't really too happy about it. And I tried to explain my position, and we went back and forth. And then one brother came to see me with another brother, and I told them how I felt about the matter. And they decided that we needed to meet with in the back of the Kingdom Hall with three brothers.
I see.
It was three brothers and me, just me. And we met and we had to discuss some things, and they made some decisions about my situation.
Right. And that happens sometimes, and we all know that can happen. And a lot of what we think about when that happens is prayer.
Oh, they were praying. They were praying. They were meditating. One of the brothers actually left the room to go into the front of the auditorium to pray. And the other one turned and faced the other direction. He was so concerned about making sure that he had God's spirit at the meeting.
Not just his spirit, but also his active force.
Most importantly, his active force. Now,
something was this situation resolved? And if so,
well, somewhat. The problem is that not across town, but in another county, I was attending another congregation, and I had a problem at that congregation. And so right around the same time, I had to meet with those ministers as well, those elders. And so we had, the one brother came and talked to me, and I told him how I felt. And then he came with two brothers. They met. I was working part-time at Arby's at the time, and they came to Arby's as I was leaving, and they asked me some questions, and I essentially confessed. And so then I had to meet with three brothers at another congregation in another county right around the same time.
So there are two sets of brothers. Now, were there two different, let's call them infractions?
Yes.
Or were there two separate groups meeting with you for the same infraction?
No, they were two separate infractions.
Right.
That's
very interesting.
Yeah, the second infraction was had to do with something of a more private nature.
Right.
Something that I had been challenged with since my teenage years, and I struggled with into my 20s. And I confessed at Arby's about that. And the second concern was I had some concerns about some dates and the teachings about the dates.
Right.
And, I had been doing a lot of research and study on this matter of, I believe it was 1916 And I had been
Oh,
doing a lot of research on it, and I decided, do you mind if I tell you, Bob, what I was feeling at that time
well,
with the
so you were doing some research. Tell us about it.
I was doing some research on the date of the end times and the year of 1916 and all of that. And well, I after really looking into some of the Sumerian texts and the Mayan long count calendar and even some astrology, which I have a little challenge now that I've been things have improved. I still struggle with astrology, Bob. I still am interested in it. It's something that I fight. But at the time, I looked into some of the astrological predictions along with the Sumerian texts, and historical evidence pointed to a much different year than 1916.
What year did it point to?
2731, Bob.
I see. So some 1600 plus years later, the date is, you felt the date that the Watchtower proposed many years ago was a little bit off.
Yes, yes. After a lot of research, there was a couple of scholars that I even met with in Philadelphia and in San Francisco, and I
Right.
went into Belize even. I was vacationing. I had been promoted at Arby's, and I went vacationing, and I had it paid for, and I met with a scholar there and did a lot of digging and looked at some stone tablets, and
Mm-hmm.
it just seemed to me that was the year of the end times.
Right. I see. You know, I hate to jump ahead, but I would love to have you back on the show to discuss opening up an Arby's in Belize.
I no longer work for the restaurant chain, but you know what, I could probably refer you to someone that, I know a lot of people in the Arby's community. I could probably refer you to someone that could help you uh, do that, or even a more of a walk-in or a takeout version of Arby's.
I see. That in itself is interesting to hear. Okay, so what happens with these two sets of elders, these two conversations? What eventually happens? Vim?
I was because they didn't. The first set of elders did not want to listen to my what I had researched and what I have really came to believe was the truth about the end times being in 2731 AD. And because of that problem that I had, that personal problem that I had that I was struggling with the other set of elders, I ended up becoming double disfellowshipped.
Hmm. Wow. Was there a did it were the announcements made on the same evening?
Um, I I think so. I think that the announcements were made on the same evening,
Wow.
and that may have been orchestrated that way. I'm not sure if the both elder bodies communicated with each other or not on the matter, but somehow it ended up working out that way. Maybe it was God's will that it be done that way.
I imagine through God's spirit that that arrangement was worked out in advance. And if it wasn't, then it was God's arrangement for it to not be worked out in advance.
Yeah, that's true, Bob. I can agree with you on that.
So what have you been doing since?
Well, it took a long time. I had to appeal, and I had to reach out to the brothers and to the congregation, and I had to spend a lot of time sitting in the back reflecting, and then I decided that, you know, they talked to me and they asked me what my belief was about the end times, if they felt that it was still 2731 AD, and I told them that I was willing to accept the, you know, the original prophecy of 1916, I think 1916, 1915 or 16. And once they realized I accepted that, I was you know, I was brought back and celebrated back into the congregation.
Now, was there a period of time where you were back in one congregation but not back in the other? If so, how long?
There was a little bit of a gap. I was allowed back in the other congregation where I had that problem with from my early teenagers years to into my 20s, and then I was permitted back into the congregation there. But the other congregation where I had some concerns about the history and the actual year of the end times, it took me longer to be allowed back into that congregation.
So it did take a little bit longer for the one set of brothers, and they just wanted to make sure, you know, the elders want to be sure of all things.
Yes, they are. They're stewards of God, and they're looking out for our lives.
So it has been, this has been one of the most interesting conversations we've ever had with anybody on the show. And I don't know if you would like to come back and talk about Arby's, but that's something we would be interested in discussing for a few minutes here on Watchtower Remembers.
Okay, that sounds good, Bob. I'd be happy to tell you everything I know about Arby's, my experience there. Maybe that'll be more encouraging than the other information that I share.
Yes, but you know, I think it's all encouraging, both discussing your role at Arby's in Belize, and overcoming the difficulties of the sitting in the back and meditating. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you for being on the show, Vim.
You're welcome, Bob. Thank you.
And
have a nice day.
Thank you for being on the show. Bye-bye. Some search for God within their minds. Vim was one of the most honest people we've ever had on the show. Probably the most honest. Thank you for joining us on Watchtower Remembers.